welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Arwin, 10th Man, Brian's Logic, Flatzoid, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good Friday, everybody.
Ni hao.
And Neil. Neil is here as well.
Yeah,
And Neil.
Yeah.
Indeed. I knew I missed somebody. It was because Neil was blocked by Arwin trying to join during my intro, as he does every single day. So I couldn't see anything. But there we go.
Sorry.
Yeah, just
Yeah, Arwin.
for future reference, just wait till the intro's done if you're going to join the Google Hangout, like Adam's done, because then it makes life a lot easier, because I can't. I'm
What
looking at a
happened?
camera.
I was blocked.
Not you, Neil. Not you.
You were apparently blocked.
I have to let you in.
Yeah.
One of the new security measures for Google is that I have to approve every single person who enters the Hangout, which means that if you have the link, you don't just get to jump straight in, which is a very good security measure. But it means that if I'm looking at a camera and talking to an audience, obviously I can't see you and let you in. And then when I do turn the camera to the screen, I can't see anything on it because it's all blacked out because it's waiting for me to say, yes, let Arwin in. Anyway, that's fascinating stuff for the beginning of a live show. I'm sure this is riveting for the live audience.
Yeah, let's dig deeper.
Indeed. Let's talk more technical stuff about the live show, and it's... No, let's not. Let's do a bit of housekeeping. I'll
say
everyone.
one more thing, Nathan, then. I purposely have to wait now, because you do rush to get here for 2, but I have noticed your protestations about arriving at bang on 2, so noted, sir.
Fair enough. That's good. I'm pleased that you come slightly later. But I haven't actually said it directly
So's
to
my
Arwin
wife.
until today, because it's always, I don't want to talk about it because it's something technical, and now I've spent 3 minutes on it in the beginning of the live show. But nevertheless, let's move on and do housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical, geometric, sphere edge, horizon formerly known as Earth curvature?
Nonsense.
Nope.
Not in Nottingham.
Absolutely
Definitely,
not.
that's a no.
Out from Discord. Signs of Earth curvature, physical, geometric, sphere edges.
Nope. Nope. Absolutely none.
Okie dokie then.
So hang on. So then, what's blocking the bottom? Excuse me.
Angular resolution limit.
Here we go. What's the blocking the bottoms of boats and buildings then, according to the ballers?
Nothing's blocked. According to ballers. Well, they don't have anything to assert anymore. So it's a paradox. What are they going to claim? Physical Earth curve gets in the way. Yeah, we don't have a physical sphere edge for a horizon. We've debunked it. So what are they going to
They're in
assert?
the
Well, they
grey
don't.
area.
What are they asserting right now? How many people in Discord are here to hold up an Earth curve calculator? Who's got a tumbleweed sound effect? Anybody want to hold up an Earth curve calculator and tell us how the horizon's getting in the way of stuff? Anybody at all? Anybody at all? Was that your tumbleweed, Flatzoid? Very good. Let's move on. Any evidence of any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Well, you would need a physical shape to have that. So obviously they don't have physicality, so they wouldn't have axial rotation.
Well, to imagine axial rotation versus measuring axial rotation, I think, is what I'm thinking right now, because they're saying the Earth is turning, but we have no evidence the Earth is turning, so we have to imagine it. And how they do it is we look at the stars that are moving, and they reverse that and say, we're moving.
So you can look at the president and say, you're the president.
What does the president have to do with it?
That's how logical that statement is.
Well, if I look at the president, I could say he's the president. What's wrong with that?
No, you look at him, you can say, you're the president. It's the same as looking at the stars and saying, look, the stars are moving, so the ground is moving.
You got me on that one.
We mentioned this the other week, and I think, didn't we have the drone coming in, Nathan? And
Yes.
it was running around my head addressing that, because we spoke about, the drone and being having to move at 1,000 miles an hour to prove one way or the other, or to demonstrate or whatever. But it got me thinking, going back old school again, and I think it was on Discord I rambled on a bit about it. But I went through Aries failure, and that, I think, is the greatest proof to demonstrate who's moving. Either us, to me, it's not science. I was chatting to John about it. It's not science, but it's a very logical demonstration that it's very clever wording again, isn't it? If we look at the way history presents all this information to us, it's worded as Aries failure, but failure being that he failed to demonstrate that the Earth was moving. To me, that's quite a logical demonstration to use to determine whether it's the stars moving or the Earth.
Adam, are you talking about the drone that's hovering at the equator of the presupposed Earth that's supposed to be rotating at over 1,000 miles an hour?
Yeah, that modern solution to the problem was what, and as I said, look back in history, and there seems to be a much more simpler and logical demonstration that can answer the question for you.
Did you want to detail Aries failure, or do you want me to?
I've got some pictures actually from. I'll see if I can
Michael
stick them in
Bowden.
Master B.
They're from Michael Bowden, by chance?
No, because I couldn't remember his name. Back in the blue screens and all that sort of stuff, and I couldn't find that video anywhere, Nathan. So it was one that popped up from the Geocentric Society, I think it was.
Correct.
I've got
While you're digging that out, just for clarity, they still believe the Earth is a sphere. They just don't believe the Earth is moving to cause the movement in the stars. So while Adam's doing this, what Aries failure is essentially is an angled telescope that, when filled with water, would slow the light travelling through the scope down. Now, if the telescope itself is physically moving eye on a rotating Earth, which causes the apparent movement of the stars, as is asserted in the heliocentric model, then as the telescope moves, the light would hit the sides and you wouldn't see it. However, if you fill the light and it's actually the light of the sky, the lights in the sky moving, then you'll still be able to focus on it still, regardless if you've got it angled correctly and you fill it with water. It doesn't change the movement of the light as the telescope moves, because the telescope isn't moving, and that's the result he got. So if I can just pin Adam's screen.
Yeah,
Right,
so
there we go.
So simply, look, if the starlight's coming in, if the star is moving, then when the starlight hits the top of the telescope, it's fine. The telescope's still stable, so it travels to the bottom still. But if it was the telescope that's moving, then when the starlight hits at the top of the telescope continues to move. The light continues on its straight path. Now, it's this differential between the speed of light in water and in air that creates this difference of where it hits at the bottom. And Airy's failure was his attempt was to calculate this movement via the movement calculate the Earth's movement by this differential in starlight hitting. But what he found was it didn't do anything. It still hit the bottom, which showed that the Earth was stationary and It was the stars that were moving. There was no movement of the light. It still carried on the same path.
Indeed. And further to that, if there was, which is being demonstrated to the contrary by Aries, then we'd have a 15 degrees an hour deviation of things in the inertial reference frame as Earth turned underneath them, like this drone that you started the example with. So the drone would launch, and it would stay in lockstep with the stars as Earth turned underneath it, if it was in a separate reference frame. But it isn't. So it's not. Earth isn't turning. Quick shout out, I am Bowden, #1 fan. Thank you very much for the super chat, really appreciate the support. Also, James Richards, thank you very much indeed for the support. He says, Earth is obviously flat. Your other senses tell you it's motionless. Profane and vain babblings and science falsity, so-called, is the only thing that convinces you otherwise. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat, and I completely agree.
I have something to say on that Aries failure, or on the what Adam said about it. I agree that it's a very, very good observation that does show that we're definitely not moving, but it's not the best one. The best one is the lack of observable Coriolis effect.
Agreed, and that's why it makes the top 3, but this is definitely noteworthy. It's something that hasn't been mentioned since about 2016, I might add. But there we go.
Well, it took me down memory lane. It's one of those things you find, like you said with Malcolm Bowden, isn't it? You stumble across it when we were first all, there was an out there, and it's such a solid demonstration. It's a few years. I tell you what's the worst bit was having to go back and remember it, Nathan. You know, because it's which is moving, which isn't moving, trying to work it out again, get it square in your head.
Right. Yeah, we're not moving. The stars apparently are. Be nice to know what they were, but we don't. Roy Stimaz, hopefully I'm saying your name right. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. No message, just gives me money. Really appreciate it. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
What is the sun?
No idea.
Is it even tangible?
No, it's not tangible.
So you wouldn't be able to get a distance then?
Yeah, you're right. We'd need to know what it was first before we can draw a tape measure out to it. If we can't draw a tape measure out to an intangible object, then how are you going to measure it?
Imagination.
Well, presupposition, actually.
Well, how is the Globers saying with confidence that's 93 million miles away? What are they using for that then?
Or the R value. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius, utilised to acquire a claimed distance to the Sun by assuming Earth is a sphere with this radius value, 3959, then assuming Venus has the same radius value as Earth, and then applying Kepler's third law to give them these distances. So that's where they get that from, 10. Any evidence of the R value?
So what happens when there's no R value because there's no R?
Then their claim falls to pieces. Distance to the Sun is
that's my
is
best
void.
argument against it then.
The distance to the Sun is void.
What?
The distance they claim to the Sun, 93 million miles, is void. Any sign?
Also a big.
Go on, Brian. Go on.
Sorry, can I just say something before you go
Yeah,
on, Nathan?
go ahead.
They're also using the thank you the speed of light calculation, which is based on Kepler's analemma being correct, and us being a particular kind of an averaged distance from the Sun. Because in his analemma, as we observe with the Sun, the opposite way around what we observe is that we're getting closer to it at one time of year and further from it another time of year. So they averaged out that distance, and with a lot of other convolution, they came up with, like, they're using the speed of light that's based off of an averaged distance of the Earth in the heliocentric model from the Sun throughout the year. So the speed of light, when people think it's an absolute definite, it's only based on us actually being on a globe with a particular radius at a particular distance throughout the year at particular times, particular distances from the Sun throughout the year at particular times, and us going around the sun. And if all that is not true, then the speed of light is also not true.
Indeed. That little assumption falls by the wayside, or to put it another way, is also void. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Well, outside of Eddington's observation, which is actually all they actually have anymore, because that is the only real backing for Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity, that Eddington witnessed the bending of space-time, because a star was seen in a position to kind of seems to come around the back of the sun or move in a different position from the sun due to supposedly the bending of space-time. But they never actually, they never validated that it wasn't refraction. So that's a bit of a, that's all they actually have. Rather than being sarcastic about it, that's all they got.
What would the hypothesis be for that, though?
Well, all they can do is observe. They can't do anything after that. So they observe in the clear, as Slick James used to say.
He's not
That's
playing.
all he got,
Brian doesn't play that game. He just lays out the details. He's not going to play baller.
Brian, just to on your speed, I think you'll find it is a constant, because I've highlighted it here. Look, in 1983, the meter was defined as the length of path travelled by light in a vacuum at an interval of that many seconds, fixing the value of the speed of light. So instead of it being previously measured as to how many meters it was going per second, what they did was rigged it all so that the two become interchangeable and they're based on each other now. So therefore, the speed of light can no longer vary and is fixed.
Hey, it sounds familiar. Is that a bit like archaeologists dating the rocks based on the fossils that they find?
Yeah, because the fossils have got are in certain types of rock, Nathan. So you can see how old they are based on the rock they are in.
So they know how old the fossils are.
Rock is.
They know how old the fossils are, which they date the rock with, because of the type of rock it's found in.
Got it.
I see.
Exactly
and with the speed of light, it's fixed based on their speed, and therefore the two become interchangeable or the same.
And I think that's where they get the phrase, it's set in stone.
Kind of like they pre-assume a vacuum here in what Adam showed. What, a vacuum of what? Where is this vacuum? We're supposed to, a space. That's the issue, isn't it? You know, all these things are delta X arguments. So everything they come up with is delta X. They never prove X.
Exactly.
You know, that's why they're holding on to Eddington, because it's delta X.
Yeah, like gas pressure gradients. How do we have gas pressure without a container? Well, we've got a gas pressure gradient. Hold on, that's a delta of gas pressure. You need gas pressure first. How do you have gas pressure? Well, we've got gas pressure gradients. Let's argue about that all day. A delta of the thing that isn't possible. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container? For all those people who believe in space being a vacuum in the sky.
If you go up Mount Everest, the air gets thinner.
And?
I don't know, that's what they tell me.
Yeah, that's saying there's gas pressure gradient. Yeah, that's right. So that's a delta of gas pressure. So we've got gas pressure up high too. That's nice. Yeah, we need containment for that.
But atmospheric
But the air's
pressure.
thinner. Why isn't it all the same? We're in a bubble. Why is the air pressure not the same all around? Ridiculous. Come on.
But atmospheric pressure, Nathan, it's not the same as gas pressure. I mean, I have a religious belief that they have to be different. Why would atmospheric pressure have to be dictated by the laws of nature, just like normal gas?
Atmo means air. Sphere is the fundamentalist religious zealot belief that they're trying to prove. So assuming that air stands in violation of gas law by taking the shape of a sphere arbitrarily when it doesn't have containment is what atmosphere is asserting when you use that word. Air, however, fills the availability of volume it has to fill. That would be the space it has to fill. And if the sky was a space... What do they call the sky vacuum again? Oh yeah, space. If the space was a space, then gas would fill it.
Yeah, where's the gas giant gradients, Neil? We're supposed to have the gas pressure gradient here, right? So where's the gas pressure gradient on these gaseous planets?
But that's just an assumption that they're gas violating the second law of thermodynamics in a sky vacuum also. Again, preposterous.
I don't know. If they're gas giants, then wouldn't you wouldn't have like a sudden cutoff point, in my opinion.
They
Like
wouldn't
with
be.
the Earth
They wouldn't
supposedly
be
being
there.
the cutoff point,
They're
and the
not.
gas being transparent here.
You're keen to beg the question. No, they're not gas giants in a sky vacuum. Why? Well, because if they were gas in a vast empty space, then they'd fill it.
Has anyone demonstrated gas falling down before at 9.8 meters per second and staying down?
Not what gas does. I can hear an air compressor in the background, right? That's not what gas does.
That's pressure, yes. That's actually gas pressure. Can you believe it?
Yeah, and when you pull your trigger, forget it, when there's no paint in it, does what come out at the end fall on the ground? Or does it just vaporize and disappear completely? The high pressure gas that you're dispersing into the low pressure gas. Does it just equalize, or does it fall down, go boom boom?
It does what gas does best. Move in
But-
all directions.
So the gas expands in all
Sorry.
directions, doesn't go down, go boom boom at 9.8 meters per second.
Definitely not.
I
I
can
mean, it
hear that
doesn't even
hissing.
go down, go boom boom. It goes towards the direction, towards the center of a sphere. It's even weirder.
No, it doesn't. It just fills the availability of volume because it expands rapidly in all directions, and the only thing that stops that is something to hit against, which is the walls of a container, which is a requirement, antecedent, for gas pressure. Can't have gas pressure without a container.
That was my question for Flatsoid Day. I can hear that hissing in the background, which sounds like you're releasing gas that you've that's under high pressure. What's the one thing you need to make that higher pressure gas so you can vent it like you're doing? There's one antecedent to increase that pressure to be able to for you to use it.
Is it gravity?
That's a hard one. Yes, I can't tell. But I know the gas just stays in a one area by itself. You know, some magical force.
Well, we can hear a pump, right? We know there's a pump involved because we can hear it. But is there anything else attached to the pump that you might require in order to pressurize that gas?
A basket?
Oh wait, is it that solid barrier thing holding everything in called?
I don't know. That's kind of what I'm asking. Do you just sweep the gas that you want to pressurize into a corner and then put a motor near it?
No, I'll just go and say, "Gravity be with you," and it stays there.
I see. So, just in case anybody hasn't cottoned on, he requires a container. That's what high pressure gas requires. And you know what? We're breathing it.
So when you put it in this container and then you open a valve, what does the high pressure gas in the container do when it's got a route to get out?
Well, there's a very concise
Does it?
description in the second law of thermodynamics called the free expansion into a vacuum.
Entropy increase? Wow.
Can I have the baller explanation for that, Adam? Yeah,
See,
the
these-
gas pressure checks out how much gravity there is, and then it vents off just a little bit of gas to even out.
I think you'll find
Calculate, yeah.
they burn
Yeah,
their bras. Burn their bras at the Carmen line.
But you guys forget, the ballers say open container is not actually a container. It's just you only really get closed containers, otherwise it's not a container.
So a bucket's not a container.
Apparently, it's a universal container, not made for gas.
Yeah, because
So it's not a container.
So they agree with us. So if it doesn't have a lid, it doesn't contain gas. Well, no, you can have a cup in front of you, and it's got as much gas in the cup as it has in the air around it. So it's not suddenly not containing any gas. It's just at the same pressure as everything around it, because it's equalised, because it's not a sealed container. And the same way is if you filled a long pipe with gas, it might hang around for a little bit, but eventually it'll dissipate with time. It's calculable with entropy. That's what entropy is, right? The change
Just
over
like
time.
was like the last demonstration I did. I took an empty open cup and I tried to pour the smoke into it, and it just didn't seem to want to stay there. It kept on rising out.
Bummer. We move on. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Yes.
Can
email.
I go back to that one just briefly? Sorry, Nathan, I was away from the phone.
Yeah, feel free.
Special request. Just one thing I have to say on that. This is a little secret that the bowlers may not be aware of, but the majority of our gas that we have in our atmosphere is nitrogen and oxygen, and the volumes that they are created and in our atmosphere is far exceeding the volumes of all the other gases, and they recycle with the earth, with the ground and sea level. So that might have something to do with them not being up high all the time at the same pressure.
Julio Pabon says, if gas went down, go boom boom, cars would never get painted. We would just have multicoloured floors.
Very true, dude.
No, because the paint is not the gas. It still has momentum as a liquid.
Yeah, but it has
I
more
ruined
mass. Owen, but it has more mass, so it should be attracted easier.
Well, you would have to hold the spray paint can closer up to the car, perhaps.
Oh my
That's it.
god. Thank you very much
I
for the
know,
super chat,
I'm
Julio
the worst.
Pabon. Really appreciate the support. I didn't think it would be in any way controversial reading out your super chat, but clearly it is.
Everything can be controversial.
Let's make a correction. For our win, anything can be controversial.
No, not anything, everything. You're misquoting me.
Fair enough. I didn't think you'd make that statement stronger, but you have. Good for you. Let's move on. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
Sorry, assumption of what?
Spherical Earth.
Too many assumptions.
What is that?
The assumption that you're standing on a sphere. People are hanging off it antipodal from your position, spinning in a sky vacuum. With a molten iron
How
core.
can an assumption have a core?
When they made it up themselves.
But where is that within the assumption?
No, it's
So
in the
where is
textbooks.
it exactly? What's the location?
3959.
This is Arwen. This
A
is
little
Arwen
bit.
being controversial.
About 3959 down and a little bit less.
No, that would be an actual location on Earth. It's an assumption.
Yeah,
So
within
where
the model,
in the
you
assumption
clarified
what's
it.
the
I don't.
actual location being an assumption and all?
Yeah, I don't need to clarify that it's an assumption when you've asked me in context with it being an assumption on their model. You can't have me out on a barrel for that when you're the one clarifying your position as where do they clarify it within their context on their model. I don't have to say, well, on their model, contextualized by them as a reification that they're assuming. You know, I'm just responding, yeah, okay. In their presupposition, they've got it down at the centre of the Earth. What do you want?
Well, I don't want to know where in their train of thought it is. I want to know where it actually is. So where
isn't.
is it actually located then?
No, there
If
isn't.
it is a
There
concept.
isn't one. It's just made up.
It's all
just
in their
made it up.
heads. That's the actual location.
In your heads, yeah. That would be the only location it can be reified from. But reification doesn't imply actual physical existence, so there is no molten iron core.
Okay, can I make an assumption that it's just molten cheese?
You could, if you could come up with a decent enough just so story. I mean, you're going to have to go a long way to beat Thea smashing into Earth at a glancing blow and depositing its molten iron core to extend the life expectancy of our molten core so that it works within the heliocentric time frame. Now, that's a pretty decent backstory. I mean, it's completely made up, but nevertheless, you're going to have to go some to top that with cheese. Top that with cheese!
Yeah, but you see, the cheese creates the gases.
Now you're just getting ridiculous. Let's get back to the molten iron core.
Doesn't the moon prove that story, Nathan? We wouldn't have a moon if that hadn't have happened.
You could weave that in. Oh no, they did, didn't they? My bad. Yes, that's right. Gravitational accretion from the debris of Thea created the moon in their backstory. I mean, yeah, you'll have to do something with weaving in the cheese moon to the molten iron core, or is that exactly where you were going, Flatzoid?
Yeah, you caught me up.
But if the moon is made of cheese, then I don't know. There would have to have been mammals a very, very long time ago in order for cheese to have actually been formed organically. So mammals existed before Thea hit?
Yeah, but you don't understand. The aliens created it, and the aliens were cows.
That's a good
Space
point.
cows.
That's a glaring flaw. Good point, Arwin. Yeah, cheese isn't natural, right? So how can it be? How can it be cheese? It's not a natural thing.
But I had a question again about molten iron core. When did that concept first come up? Who originally brought it forth, or who claimed it?
I did just now,
Because-
2 minutes ago. I did just now.
Oh God! No, come on. In history, when was it first claimed? Who?
I see.
Who came up with that?
I see your question. Your question is who invented, or who postulated, or who first reified this concept of a molten iron core into existence? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, or who put it into all the school books, basically? Who,
I'm going to guess it was
reified
probably the
When
Maitre.
did it happen?
I don't know. Should we look it up? Who's got Google?
Can we agree that
Give me five.
since we had Aries failure, this one could be labeled Dairy's failure since it's not cheese?
Dear, Dairy's failure. God.
It's all spoiled. You spoiled it all.
You said it's not natural, but wouldn't they get it all that source from the Milky Way?
God.
The Milky Bar goodness.
That's
Yeah,
a
you
good
got
one.
a point there.
Alan.
The moon can be made of cheese because of the
Woo,
Milky Way.
Adam.
Look, you throw in a few cheese puns and suddenly there's chaos. Who's got an on-topic
Are you
point to
trying to
make?
say flat earthers are lactose intolerant?
No, the Milky Way is kind of cheesy.
Look, can we
Yeah, but-
cut the cheese puns? Boom, boom!
Everyone missed my one. I said, isn't that a Gouda one?
It's a good pun.
There
You're
are giant
hallucinating.
holes in this theory.
You guys
Right.
are hallouming me.
Well, let's cut the cheese puns now. So that concludes the housekeeping.
There's too many holes in the moon cheese theory.
Too many holes, indeed.
You
Sorry,
can see straight
Flatzoid.
through it.
It's a failure, but we haven't proven molten iron core, and nobody's rushing to provide us any evidence thereof. Did anybody
I got
Google it in
it.
the meantime?
I got
Oh,
it.
Adam's presenting. Here we go. Let's have a look.
Okay. Discovery, which I think is quite an interesting word to use. Earth was discovered to have had a solid inner core from its molten outer core in 1936 by the Danish seismologist Inger Lehmann, who deduced its presence by studying seismographs from earthquakes in New Zealand.
So
What?
it's fairly new then.
Really?
Very
That's
He
new.
observed
Yeah.
that seismic waves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god! So it is literally P waves and S waves that made everybody in the world write down this story about molten iron core. That's
Does it shock you in the slightest that it's recent? Who is it that was
Me,
exasperated?
I said that. I didn't think it's this recent though.
When you find out that the Big Bang is only about 60 years ago, nothing's shocking anymore, right?
Nah, thank you, Lemaitre.
right.
Exactly.
Molten iron core came before the Big Bang.
Most of these stories have come from relatively recent people who we have photographs of, a lot of them wearing dog collars.
So, molten iron, F. Birch, 1952. A few years later, in 1940, it was hypothesized that this inner core was made of solid iron. And then in 52, Birch published details and analyzed data and concluded the inner core was probably crystalline iron. Probably.
Is it not
So it
mentioned the
seems to be a compoundment of assumptions to lead you to your final assumption.
Well,
of
it doesn't give us the answer, though,
what's
because what we're trying to find out is where did the backstory... If this molten iron core itself, regardless of the backstory and why it hasn't cooled down yet, which comes later... So the whole purpose of the story of Thea is to explain why, given their time frame, the molten iron core hasn't already cooled down, because it should have done. So they've got to come up with an explanation for why it's still there. given the time frame of the heliocentric system. So they come up with a story of something hitting it at a glancing blow because it's on a path. Well, if this is only, how many years did we say this was?
40s.
40s.
Hmm.
So the Thea story will be
18
more
years old.
recent as a justification for somebody who's gone, hold on a second, if we've got this molten iron core, based on my maths, it should have cooled down already. Well, no, Thea smashed into the side. When did that come? Because that's obviously much more recent. I would guess within the last 30 or 40 years, within our lifetimes.
There's another aspect to it as well. As far as I remember, the molten iron core is going in the opposite direction to the supposed rotation of the globe. So that would kind of cause problems for the rotation of the globe, really, if you were to talk about momentum, wouldn't it? Regardless of it being in a vacuum. Now, this is all begging the question nonsense that we'd end up arguing about that means nothing. But just stating.
Yeah, but Brian, in the model, everything can work out.
Yeah, you just walk the runway.
Yeah, and if anything violates with natural law, you just say that doesn't apply to the model. You just don't mention that bit.
Yeah, they even said that, didn't they? That only recently, that it doesn't apply to natural law. The whole globe model, basically. It's just like it's outside of what we know as normality. You're joking me.
Kind of sounds like they're trying to make the model God.
But just make the
If it
model their
doesn't-
world. It's just reification. It's not that. It isn't that far along Flatzoid. It's just reification. They're just turning the non-physical, mathematical, the models, the philosophies into what they think is their real world, concretism. So they've turned that which is not concrete into something concrete by way of thought only, because it isn't concrete. It isn't real. Did you want
So
to
Nathan, before Adam presents on this last topic, so since it doesn't apply to natural law according to some ballers, then how are they converting Einsteinian 4D into Newtonian
They're not.
3D?
They're not.
Didn't Rumpus have a formula for that?
No, he didn't. There won't be one. There isn't one. It can't be done. Adam, you're presenting. Feel free when you're ready.
I just thought I'd see if I can find it. It's great. I like the bullet points. It summarises the validation for the Thea story. Earth spin and Moon's orbit have similar orientations. Moon's sample indicates that the Moon's surface was once molten. That'll be that bit of wood they've got. The Moon has relatively small iron core, apparently. Determine that one. The Moon has a lower density than the Earth. There is evidence in other star systems of similar collisions resulting in debris disks. I don't know. Giant collisions are consistent with the leading theories of the formation of the solar system, and the stable isotope ratios of lunar and terrestrial rock are identical, implying common origin. Scrolls here, it appears to be. In 1898, George Darwin made the suggestion that the Earth and Moon were once a single body. Darwin's hypothesis was that the molten Moon had been spun from the Earth because of centrifugal forces. So it starts with this by the looks of it, and then, as always, he elaborates. We bring in Thea, prose by English geochemist Alex Halliday.
Got a date?
2000?
No, it can't be that recent. Really?
I'll read it. The name of the hypothesized protoplanet is derived from the mythical Greek titan Thea, who gave birth to the Moon, a goddess Selene. This designation was proposed initially by the English geochemist Alex N. Halliday in 2000 and has become accepted in the scientific community.
Wow. Even I'm amazed how recent that is.
So back to Greek gods.
Accepted in the scientific community. Yeah.
So consensus then, not science.
Well, it's an accepted story. It becomes part of the
Also,
rhetoric.
the scientific community is not very scientific if you're just going to just accept it without any hypothesis testing or anything.
Yes, well, accepted by the scientific community sounds a lot better than has become part of our religious rhetoric.
That does sound a lot more honest, though.
No
Were
one
they
wants to
even
hear that.
scientists then?
Well, there's your scientific papers that they use to cite it. Terrestrial accretion rates and the origin of the moon. And number 13 was, this was what I was found for. The big splat, or how our moon came to be. Damn scientific, doesn't it, that?
What is the IV? What is the DV?
If big splat.
No, let's not try and even feign a hypothesis on their behalf. Look, this is their just so story. Let's just lay it out like they lay it out. The fact that they've already declared it's been accepted by the scientific community, meaningless though that is still, this is their story, right? This is how the moon came to be, according to them, because they made it up themselves.
That book was 2003, and this is February 2000. So it is that recent. Mad.
To me, right, the web of lies gets ever more thin and wider as time progresses, right? So in a way, it's initially a shock that this has come from 2000, but given that we often discuss how we speculate that the origins of the lie are in, 100 to 150 years ago, i.e. pretty damn recent. Now, obviously at the end of the lie, when it's all falling to pieces because the web gets spun out too thinly or too wide, and it all falls to pieces like any lie. Well, you're going to have recent additions to the lie that, obviously, I don't think any of us here were flat earthers when this was being spun out into the public's perception, right? But at least some level we're all aware of it. Isn't that amazing? Maybe it's just me, I don't know. I think that's pretty damn funky. But I'm just saying that it makes sense when you say, well, if we speculate that the lie only started 150 years ago, you'd get to this point where the lies are so thinly pulled out and riddled with contradictions, just waiting to collapse. Because, it doesn't take that long for a lie to become exposed, right? And it amazes me that it hasn't, if it is 150 years ago, when you put that other hat on, take off the shock and awe hat, put back on logically, a lie's not going to last that long, right? It's got to fall apart at some point. We're just witnessing it now. Or at least witnessing... No, we're not witnessing the start of it, because there's been objections all along, right? When you look back through history, you can see plenty of people objecting and saying, no, it's not a sphere, this is nonsense. And of course they get ridiculed throughout history as well, like we do.
I'd like to point out there on that part where that Arwen latched onto also about how it's accepted. This theory has been, colloquial theory, has been accepted by the scientific community. But I'd like to point out to flat earthers that we are also the scientific community. They're not a separate body from us. We are the scientific community. Everybody is technically the scientific community.
No, we're not. Only by their standards. No, there is no scientific community. Science is a method, right? There is no community of this method. There might be practitioners of the method who may have used it in the past to validate a cause of an effect. But beyond that, there's no community of science. There might be a handful of people who have actually performed the method. That's it. But no, yeah, by their standards, they say, well, we're a scientific community and our consensus rules. Well, we're saying, what, based on that set of rules that you've laid down about what science is, we also want in? Not here. No, I don't say that at all. In fact, we criticise people on our own side who have recognised the magic trick and try and utilise it to their advantage and start talking about science, even though they're flat earthers and we're all day talking about what science actually really is. But they'll still punt some nonsense story and claim it's science to make their point more, or seem more valid.
Yeah, but well, I was actually saying the same thing as you, but in a different way. Well, not exactly the same. Well, yeah, the same basically is what you're saying. Is that the scientific community, everyone's part of this supposed scientific community, if you understand what I mean. It's like, it's been accepted by the scientific community. But sure, it's not accepted by me.
It's just consensus.
What is the scientific community?
Consensus, yeah.
The scientific community. As if there's some kind of group of special people. No, it's like, it's not accepted. Everyone is technically the scientific community. If you want to go by what, like, if they want to stay the scientific community, that's everybody. We all live on this world, so any claim about this world, everybody has a say in that.
Okay, what they are, as opposed to I was thinking, how can I best label them? And you could say, well, they're the pseudoscience community. Well, no, because they're not necessarily always saying this is science. You know, they might just detail something like Michio Kaku with all the disclaimers attached about how non-scientific it is. They even chuckle about the potential to even be using scientists, in a real way and utilising this method, which most of them don't know or utilise, right? That's something that could come along. So you can't say pseudoscientists, right? But you can definitely say that they're all authoritarian. They are all in authority when it comes to this particular worldview and the stories attached to the philosophy. Well, that's being an author as opposed to a scientist. So they're the author of this. That's why I say it's just so stories, and it's true because they made it up themselves. Well, what's an authority? Somebody comes up with a way or a means and says that's how it should be done. Do it. That's the authority. Well, they've just authored that, in this case, worldview. It could be a rule. It doesn't matter. But that's what an authority does. So they have engineered a position where they're saying we are the authority. And the reason I objected to Brian is because Brian's saying, well, by that standard, anybody could be the authority. Yeah, that's true. Anybody could put themselves in the position where they make themselves the authority on whatever nonsense they want. But it doesn't make it science, and it doesn't make us a scientific community. It just means that you've put yourself in, like they are, a position of authority to author certain aspects of people's lives. And for me, that makes me quite uncomfortable because I see it happening on our own side. I know I'm just reiterating what I've just said, but there are people who have recognised that magic trick. That is the magic trick of utilising a part of your brain that was trained at a very early age that science proves things. It's an empirical method. And then using that word, science, and some of the associated words like experiment to make your just so story more believable. And that comes with it a lot of power. People will, warm to it because they're trained with it. And we here highlight how the globe has utilised this magic trick of claiming science when they have none, to the point where yesterday we were having a damn good laugh about them, i.e. Rumpus, saying the body of science this and the body of science that whenever asked for any proof of anything. Well, now they don't do that. Well, why? Because we actually asked them for their science. And the same could be said of our own side. So I don't want our side, I don't call it sides, but anybody in particular to suddenly realise that there's a magic trick that's useful, rather than going, isn't it a crime, not a crime, but a wrong that we have been subject to a magic trick where someone says the word science or says the word experiment and then expects us to believe a made-up story just because we instinctually think that that means they've proven it. Well, I'd much prefer people actually recognise what science is and what just so stories are, what philosophy is. That's beyond most normies, though. I've accepted that. In many respects, you've got to sit back and just laugh at the world around you. We're in a conformist society where many of the people who just want to get on with their life don't realise that just wanting to get on with their life means that they are a conformist. Well, you just have to accept that if you're going to have a sane life and not go nuts. Just accept that that's the world around you. But for me personally, now I know that there's a magic trick that could be utilised to my advantage. I could just start talking about science and making plausible stories up, so I was part of the scientific community, right, Brian? Well, I don't want to do that. I'd feel wrong. I'd feel like I was cheating to and lying to anybody who took in what I said and believed it based on their instinctual belief that because I said science or said experiment at some stage, that made what I said true. Well, that's what we fell victim to, and I think it's wrong that we should just say, well, that's a useful tool. Wow, that's a really nice magic wand, that. I'll pick it up and wave it around. Wow, look at that, everyone believes what I'm saying. No, that's just wrong. There is no scientific community, there is no scientific consensus, there is only a method that empirically establishes the cause of phenomena you're studying. That's it.
We've been mugged off into thinking the designation blah 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 and has become accepted in the scientific community. And we've been mugged off into thinking that adds some extra validity. Like a load of people believe the story. It has no validity when you're talking about science, whether it's one person accepts it or everybody accepts it. It either is scientifically correct and has scientific validity or it doesn't. This is just, as I think, the structuring and the mugging off of how we've been conned into accepting pseudoscience, first of all, as science. And then this is the next stage where actually you're not clever enough to understand this, but lots of clever people say this is definitely right, so that means it has validity, when it's not required. We're all intelligent enough to.
And the same thing. Hold on,
So
just
it's
before you
just
go on.
appeal to authority then.
It isn't. Well, an appeal to authority is only invalid if the person is digging through, making tunnels in mountains as opposed to measuring gravity. They're not an authority on gravity. The fact that they appeal to it in some of their explanations doesn't make them an authority. In the same way as your mom telling you to brush your teeth because she knows best isn't making her a dentist. That's where the appeal to authority works. If you've got a subject matter expert, you can prove them wrong with evidence, but you can also appeal to them as a subject matter expert and not be accused of a fallacy when you say, oh, well, you're appealing to the authority on a specific subject.
Sorry, that was my fault. The flats I got kicked. I hit by accident. I hit his name, and the red X came, or the green X came up, and as I was closing the phone, I hit that. Sorry, Flatside.
Oh, well, you just means you can't hear him anymore because he's still here.
Oh, sorry, what? What happened to me?
Okay, let's not get into the technical.
I almost kicked Kent as well.
Hold on, just before we get away from
No, I
Adam's
had
point.
a phone call.
Just before we get lost from Adam's point. Right, we've been mugged off. We've been convinced that we had science when we were being told just so stories, originally peppered with words like experiment, and now it's gone beyond that. Now it's got to the point where, look, us up on high, no, and we're telling you what we've all agreed on. Okie dokie, pat you on the head. Well, don't get offended if you're Christians and Catholic, but the priesthood did the same thing with the interpretations of the Bible when we were under a religious rule. Well, an overtly religious rule, which it probably wasn't stated as at the time. Nobody knew that was religion when it was just religion, as we would easily define it now. Back if you were living in those times, you'd have just thought that was the world, right? And anybody told you different, you got in a lot of trouble for it. Well, that sounds familiar, right? Well, in the same way, the priest can give you his interpretation, and it's them deciding what the interpretation is and then passing it on to you. Well, this is no different. They're like priests. They're not doing any science, but they call themselves science.
Exactly. So now when we challenge them and they give us corny answers and we break down all their answers, like yesterday's show, oh, well, you got to imagine Einstein's whole theories. It's not proven. So then we say, oh, so what else have you lied to us about? So it seems like from this point, our show, we're uncovering all the lies about the nature of the earth that this so-called science community has hoisted on the Western world. And then we see in other shows with different parameters, they're uncovering other things that are lies in this world. And as you've said, the world's a stage and they're all actors, right? So this is a good thing to uncover with truth all the lies.
It's very like, and it's no coincidence that it's very like the structure of the Catholic Church. Because they'll start telling you who and what God is, and what God says, and what you should do because God said it, and blah, blah, blah. And they'll change the story if they need to. And it just happens to be Jesuit priests, which gave the heliocentric model, everything it has more or less. The Big Bang came from Jesuit priests. It's the whole structure of it screams Catholic Church. It's like the Catholic Church and the so-called scientific community are one and the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
no,
you're right.
You're absolutely right there.
Yeah.
Go on, Fletcher.
No, we're just agreeing with you and nodding along, but I don't know if we all have, but I certainly have looked through the history of where this narrative has come from. And as I said earlier, it's all men in dog collars. That's where it's all come from.
Dog collars. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, the Bible.
Bible's.
Well, go on, Adam.
I would say not just dog collars, as you alluded, and Brian said, it's the Catholics, and fundamentally Jesuit line is the introduction, from what I can see, of this ball model. And I think, as we were saying earlier, and being shocked by Thea being 2000, this is always portrayed to us as if we've always known it, and the Jesuit model at the time. And you go back to the turn of the century, you know, people, when we look into it, didn't necessarily believe that the Earth, this Copernican model. Yet we're told now that they did believe it back then. And this is part of that whole historical narrative that gets us to the point now with these power systems where, as we compare, it's the same thing, isn't it? Because it's got the same origin. And so that's why it has such a similar methodology of control and conning of people into false authority, because it's of the same origin from the same people.
Well, history, according to Fox's Book of Martyrs, as well as other sources, when the Bible was available to people outside the control of the Catholic Church started killing those people and burning those Bibles. It doesn't sound like this organization really is standing for God. It sounds like, oh, you're going to get a Bible? You're going to read and see that we've been lying to you? No, we can't have that. So we're going to kill you because we want to keep our control. This is exactly what it is, because I'll bring it to modern date. Both my wife and I were raised Catholic, and we both challenged the priests at our local church, and they said, no, we have to read the Bible and tell you what it says. You can't. Told to our face. They're just about control. They don't represent God.
Yeah.
In the Catholic Church will give you the impression that they've had a serious amount of, let's say, spiritual control, or being the spiritual leaders for hundreds of years all over the world. But that's not true. If you go back into the history, about 150 to 170 years ago, around the world, there was a lot of turmoil going on. And Ireland alone was in a famine. So the Catholic Church, what they did is this is going to be very similar to what the supposed science community is doing today. They said, you can have food if you come to us. So you won't starve to death if you come to us. That's what the Catholic Church did. So now it's very similar in the world we're in now, where it's like, you can have a lot of things if you just do what we want you to do from the scientific community. I'm not going to go into the details of it, you know what I'm talking about.
We can all read right between the lines, given that it's I'll state the date, so it's the first part of 2021. So I'm sure if you're watching this live or very soon after it's been recorded, people can read between the lines, Brian. So absolutely, there's a direct parallel. With that, I'll say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, or joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!